welcome to Lesson 15 of the Special Operations Candidate course. We're going to talk in this lesson about attrition by being physically unprepared. We kind of mentioned this a little bit in the last lesson, which was about administrative drops. But we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about it. There's basically a couple things that can happen when you're physically unprepared. Again, for the sake of brevity, we've narrowed it down to 2 things. You could probably come up with 10 different scenarios, but this covers, let's say, 95% of cases, in which case, anytime we boil something down to 2 or 3 major ideas, it covers 95 to, let's say, 99% of cases, and we're not really worried about the extra 1%. We're interested in helping you be as effective as possible within, reason, within that 95 to 99% success rate. We're not concerned with covering every particular contingency necessarily. So, a couple things that could happen when you're physically unprepared. First is that you become an administrative drop, which we just talked about. That's actually the best case scenario here. So if you're physically unprepared, you may become an administrative case. And what happens there is, as I said again, you haven't made an elective decision to quit. Okay? You continue to perform and show effort and show resolve to your instructor staff. Make no mistake about it. One of the biggest parts of pipeline is mental in nature. That is why we spend so much focus on psychology and building the pyramid from the bottom up and all that stuff. So there are plenty of times when you're being evaluated either mentally in combination with physical, or sometimes your instructors, I'm going to tell you right now, are using physical means to challenge you and test you mentally. There is sometimes no interest in your physical performance other than how you deal with it mentally. Some exercises are going to be designed that way on purpose. So, if you show resolve, if you show continued effort, if you do not give up, however you are not passing a physical standards requirement, these are the cases in which physical performance does actually matter. If you're not passing that required standard despite many attempts, they're going to look at whether you can be remediated quickly, whether we can remediate you right now. In a physical sense, it's not possible maybe right now, so can we sidestep you for 1 or 2 classes and get you up to speed, put you in a special training division, and kind of get you where you're supposed to be? But then we have to deal with physical limitations of the human body. Can we increase your performance significantly in that short period of time? Or is it going to take a longer remediation period, in which case we need to administratively drop you, let you fix yourself, and then let you come back in at a later time? If that happens because you continually fail a performance standard physically, you're going to be in the administrative group. The most important thing to remember here is that you have positive resolve and you have not made the elective decision to quit. Those go along with administrative drop. Any other result would not take you to an administrative drop, but it would take you to an elective decision to quit, and that's totally looked at differently, especially if you try and come back later to pipeline. So that's the good things about the administrative case, which is the better of the 2 case scenarios. The other one is that you become a case of being mentally unprepared. How could that happen? Okay, let's say that you believe you're physically prepared, and so mentally you're fine. Okay, as training goes on, normally through the pipeline, you're going to be progressively more and more challenged physically, mentally, all sorts of different ways, right? But we're talking about physical right now. So physically, you're going to be challenged more intensely throughout the pipeline as time goes on than you were in the very beginning. And you may realize that the rest of the class that you're with is able to do certain things and no one's having a problem, and you're the only one, you're having a problem. If you notice something like that, you come to the awareness that you may be physically unprepared. Okay? Now, you can make the decision to continue to try anyways, regardless of the fact that you're the only one, regardless of any negative for changes in mental status. So in other words, you don't really care that you're not physically prepared. You're going to continue to try anyway because you've still got that resolve. That's one option. The other option is it does mentally affect you, and your knowledge or your awareness of the possibility that you're physically unprepared leads you to mental issues. And when we talked about no-shows and a change in self-confidence, we're talking about that again, just not at day one. We're talking somewhere in the middle of your pipeline now. So it's a no-show mentality again, kind of, just later on. All right, so we're changing our mental state based on the fact that we realize that we might be physically unprepared, that we might be singled out, that everyone else is doing just fine and maybe we weren't as prepared as we thought. Self-confidence changes in a negative way. Again, if that happens, you're going to act in a mentally unprepared way. You may make an elective decision to quit if the self-confidence factor or intimidation factor becomes overwhelming enough for you. Okay, so again, almost the same mentality as a no-show, just later on in training. So those are the two things pretty much that could happen here. If you don't make continued efforts to meet a performance standard, just because it starts to weigh on your mind, and you start to lose that mental focus and that resolve, then you will not make it to the administrative removal, but instead you will quit beforehand, which makes you a case of being mentally unprepared. If that happens, of course you're going to be removed from training, but by your own decision. So there is no good outcome to being physically unprepared, obviously, and so most programs understand that, and most trainers or mentors go through extensive effort to try and get you as physically prepared as possible. Unfortunately, like I said, that doesn't necessarily mean that they address this, because if they addressed this properly, if you did not have to worry about being mentally unprepared and you did not have a change in resolve and your motivations were solid and we prepared you mentally and you got to the point where you decided you were maybe physically unprepared, you would still continue because of that resolve until you were administratively removed, which again is good for you. As I said in the last lesson, it's better to be removed from training despite continued efforts and resolve than to remove yourself by your own volition. So if you can, you want to be in a category of we remove you because you just weren't doing the standard and we know it's something you could improve, instead of nobody knows why you quit, but you quit. That's pretty much it for physical unpreparedness. Of course, we do try and cover it, but we cover it in combination with mental preparedness and critical skills and so on. So that the best case scenario, if you do find yourself physically unprepared, is that you still seek administrative removal from training despite continued efforts. In fact, you're not seeking a removal from training at all. You're continuing to persist. And that difference in mindset is what's going to make you more likely to be able to come back to pipeline instead of another candidate, because they may not be so persistent or have such resolve. Our next lesson is going to be on a recap of attrition, all the methods of attrition that we talked about, the major ones. And of course, contact us by phone, email, comment system. Don't forget to like, subscribe for all the new future videos, and check out the website, which has all sorts of stuff in addition to these videos. Again, if you haven't seen the website or heard me say this yet, not only do we have videos, but we have audio recordings for you to take these lessons with you somewhere and listen to them, or we have electronic and printed written media. So whether it's textbooks or workbooks where you can kind of apply the theory and knowledge and stuff that we're talking about. All three of these, when you combine them all together, or even in-person training if you're here in the San Diego area, when you combine them all together, it produces the most effective program that we can give you. Okay, the video lessons are good, but you shouldn't end your training there. You should continue to try and get as much knowledge about this stuff as possible, be as fluent in it as possible, and by doing that, by trying to perform and increase your ability consistently and progressively, you're just going to be better at everything that you attempt to do from that point on. So thanks for watching again. See you in the next one.